Robert Plank Show, episode 274. Discover your ideal market, focus on creativity, create the right team, and systems with the king of podcasting, Jonathan Rivera. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the show. Our guest today is Jonathan Rivera, and Jonathan comes from a blue-collar background, and he left the rat race to pursue real estate, and he runs a successful rental business in only 4 hours a week. And today his main focus is running the Podcast Factory, which is a podcast network and production company where he is surrounded by some of the world's most respected direct response marketers. So Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Robert, thanks for having me on.
I'm glad that you were on. So we talked about a couple of things there in your bio about real estate, podcasting, 4 hours a week. So, I mean, what are you up to lately? And out of those things, what has you the most excited?
Well, let's see. What has me the most excited has nothing to do with work. It's being with my family. But second to that is the work that I'm doing over at the Podcast Factory now, hanging out with my mentors, rapping, sharing our insights, and hopefully helping people along the way.
Awesome. And so you're having fun, you're helping people out. And so what exactly is this thing called the Podcast Factory?
Well, it started by accident, right? So it was just me talking to some of my mentors who had helped me out. So you talked a little bit about the 4-hour work week at my real estate business. And the reason that's possible is because I've had some really great mentors in my life who have helped me with direct response marketing, helped me with email, sales, positioning, direct mail, all that kind of stuff, to the point where our units are now full. We have a waiting list and people are always trying to get in. We've raised our prices twice in the last year and people are still trying to get in. And so these guys that helped me out a ton, I liked them a lot. I wanted to hang out with them and they wanted to do podcasts. I'm like, yeah, I can help you out with that, because I was just using it as an excuse to rap with my buddies. And I figured the people listening might get a little bit of information from us and it might be useful to them as well. And that's where it all started, really, was just me rapping with my buddies. And before I knew it, it turned into a full production house. We've worked on like 18 shows now. I've co-hosted 8 shows and we're up over 1 million downloads. All kinds of stuff going on. It's actually a business now, and it started by accident.
Awesome. And aren't those like the best kinds of business to start, right? Where it's like you're just helping people and you're maybe doing it for fun, and then you realize, oh, I could charge for this thing.
It's probably one of those things where most people would overlook it. And I'm very fortunate to have had mentors and to invest in masterminds and to always be improving myself. And it wasn't until I was sitting at this very high level mastermind in Texas and I was working on my real estate training business, and all anybody wanted to talk to me about was the podcast thing. And I'm sitting there saying, that's not what I'm working on right now. I got to get my work done. And I realized later on when I talked to my wife, I said, I think the podcast thing might be the business. So I might have to look into that. And it's been about a year and a half since it's been a real business where I've been focusing on it. And my wife is actually working with me full time. So we're both working from remotely, actually, from the house sometimes. Last month we were in Utah all month, snowboarding and working. And it's turned into this thing that has a life of its own. And now I'm just here guiding the ship.
Awesome. So it took off, and now you're living the dream. And so just to get everyone sort of caught up, so a podcast is like what we're on now, where it's like an internet radio show. We're on iTunes, and so I'm looking at the Podcast Factory website here, and I recognize about half the names. I recognize, Ben Settle and Dan Meredith and Michelle Spiva and Igor and some of these, and James Jones and all these people. And so if someone is a member or a client of yours, what does that entail? Are you, getting them guests? Are you publishing the podcast? What exactly do you do for these clients?
It started, like I said, by accident. I was really just rapping with my buddies, and we turned it into shows and shared it out to the world. And so now it's a full-fledged business, right? So someone comes in and they want to build up their authority. They want to take up some market share. They want to be known as a leader in their market. I help them with that. And the tool that we use is podcasting, but there's so much more behind the scenes, like knowing your market, knowing your offers, making sure that you have the right calls to action. So what I'm realizing is it started out as just producing shows for people, and it's morphed into this bigger thing now where when someone comes in, I really get into their goals for the next 3 years and figure out if I want to take that ride with them. And then we start looking at how the pieces connect, how the podcast fits into the lead generation, into the sales, and into the bigger picture of the lifestyle they're trying to live. So it's it's really, like I said, taking on a life of its own. In fact, I got a testimonial the other day from my buddy Kyle from Unlocking Your Inner Strength. And one of the things that he said that I just found so interesting was that it's not just the tech stuff that we help him with, but we give him business and life advice. And that was something that made me feel really special, because the impact that we're not only having on his life, but his listeners' lives is really helping me realize what my legacy looks like.
Awesome. And what's cool about just what I've heard so far from you about what you're doing to help these people is that, I've seen a few of these sort of podcast services, and I'm sure you've seen some of them too, where they say, we'll edit your podcast, or we'll put music on it and stuff like that. But it sounds like you also work with them on the marketing side of things, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that a lot of these other services don't necessarily do. Like, these other services, it sounds like, just do the technical stuff and you do the marketing as well.
Yeah, so it's a more holistic approach. That's a funny word, holistic. But it really is, because anybody can do that. You can get an engineer to go ahead and mix a show up for you. That's easy. But knowing the bigger goal of what the purpose of your show is and how your show gets you from where you are today to that vision you have of yourself a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, that is a longer term approach, because you can get, like I said, audio engineer anywhere. But to get somebody involved in your vision, helping you guide your way to that vision, that's a different level of relationship. And that's why I'm pretty picky about the people I work with. I mean, the names that you said you already knew, those people are known names in their industries. And that's why I want to work with people that had a bigger vision, and I want to help them make that vision a reality. And I want to impact lives on the way there.
Awesome, and I'm right there with you as far as impacting lives. So I'm really curious about kind of what that initial conversation is like. I don't know if maybe you're okay with talking about Kyle or maybe someone else, but I'm sort of curious about, you mentioned that someone comes to you and they say, and you talk about, like, their next 3 years, or you kind of flesh out, like, what's the reach going to be. So, like, what is that conversation sort of like? Like, when you ask somebody, what does the next 3 years look like what do some of your clients say as an answer to that question?
So before they become clients, I interview them. So you won't find a sales page on my site. You won't find a way to get into my podcasting service until you're on my email list. I have a waiting list, and then every so often I open up the doors and I allow people to apply. And when they apply, my team reviews the application, and we already have some things set up where we say, this sounds good, great, let's get on the phone with them, or this doesn't sound right, not a match, forget them, right? And so, and it's just that I can't help everybody. So I want to be with someone whose vision I like. And so one of the initial things that we're doing when we're interviewing them before they come on board is to find out if they actually have a bigger goal. Because if I'm talking to someone and I ask them, what does your life look like 2, 3 years from now? And they can't tell me, then this person does not have a bigger goal, a bigger picture, and has no direction. And I can't give that to you. It's just not possible. So you have to come in with a vision, and then I help harness that vision. So when they first come in, it's just some topical questions about that kind of stuff, and finding out about their database, and finding out what their mission is and what they're trying to accomplish, and to see if I can help them do all of that. And if it's a match, if I like them, if they like me, we decide to work together. Then after we get the show launched, I have what I call, and I didn't make this up, I'm in strategic coach. So it's the R Factor DOS conversation. If you look up Dan Sullivan and his book, The Dan Sullivan Question, you'll see the whole layout right there. But after we launch their show, I get into the even bigger vision. What are we doing 3 years from now? What does your future look like? What does your business look like? What does your personal life look like? And I start getting really involved in that kind of stuff, to the point where we talked about Kyle. He didn't even realize it. We had this conversation, and he was talking about stuff like having a lake house and all this other stuff. And he was looking at it like it was 3 years down the road. But after we had the talk and he became more aware of it, he's like, why am I not doing this now? Dude went out and bought himself and his family a lake house like 2 months after the conversation. So I'm harnessing what they already want and helping them focus on it in the bigger picture. And so that part of it is the podcasting, part of it is the marketing, part of it is the back end, whether it's a membership site or their coaching or their products and services, tying all those things together so they actually function. Because most people that are just doing that podcasting production service alone, that's all they do. They get you good sound, and that's all they can do. We're doing something bigger over here at the Podcast Factory.
Awesome, holistic, just like you said, not just the podcast, but also that back end, also those membership sites and stuff like that.
Yeah, goofy word, holistic, but I had to throw it out there.
But then once it gets stuck in your head, you can't not use it, right?
Yeah, so we're stuck on that. Yeah, so yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun doing this. It's a lot of fun, the people that I choose to work with and that we connect with. It's more like really, I look at them as friends and family, people who I really care about, and that's why I have to do the interviews and the whole process, because I can't spend the next 3 to 5 years with somebody I don't care about. And same for them. They can't spend that time with me because, look, podcasting, a lot of people think that it's one of these things where you could try podcasting. I'm going to try 5 episodes or 10 episodes. If you're trying, you might as well not bother, because podcasting, and look, I've been doing it since 2009. This is how I know. Podcasting is a long-term venture. You have to have an investor mindset. You have to put in your time. And once you put in your time, you get things dialed in, you start seeing results down the road. But that doesn't happen if you just try it. You have to commit to it.
Awesome, and so I kind of want to talk about that. I sort of want to go in that direction. Is when you're meeting with some of these people, and you're like narrowing down to see, like, if they have a big goal and a vision, and if you have a good match and the personalities fit and stuff like that, and then they become a client. And so, I mean, what kinds of decisions are there to be made? Like, do you help name their podcast? Do you decide on a podcasting schedule and guests, or like, what kind of things go into your thought process?
All of it, everything. Like, they come here and they just have the idea of a podcast, and they're busy, right? They're busy business people. They're already doing well with whatever they have going on, and they want to add a podcast without a lot of extra work. And so a lot of times they've taken courses before, and once they go inside and they see that there's 1,000 videos on audio engineering, they're like, no, thanks, too much work. And so they really value their time, and they're trying to figure out, how does this fit into my bigger goal? And that's what I do. I help tie it all together. So yeah, for some of them, it's lining up guests. Like for Doberman Dan, we're lining up guests all the time for him. Of course, there's a podcast production side. And even when they come in, when someone comes in and we've got the agreement going, they've already paid to get started, I still won't even get on the phone with them again. And I let them know this on the sales call with them. I'm like, hey, we're not going to talk till you do assignment 1. So the sooner you get assignment 1 done, the sooner we could get going on your show. And we can usually launch a show in 30 days as long as they're meeting the deadlines. But assignment 1 helps me and them get their market crystal clear in their head, which also helps us figure out their problems, the market's problems, and helps us figure out the topics, the packaging. And when I say packaging, I mean stuff like the bumpers on the audio, the actual iTunes cover, the even the calls to action and all that stuff. All of it has to tie together, and it starts with knowing the market, getting that dialed in, and then from there is where we start coming up with topics, name of the show, packaging, everything. So scheduling, we do that as well. Booking them guests, we get that taken care of. My goal is to make it really almost brain dead simple. Like, the way people envision podcasting is like, oh, you just hit record and it's done. And you already know, Robert, it's way more than that. You got post-production, you've got the posting, you got the marketing. My people don't have to think about that stuff because we take care of it for them.
Cool. So they just get to have fun, and they get to pursue their passion and do the artistic stuff while you do the mechanical stuff.
Right, exactly. They come in, and that's what most of them will say. If you go look at the testimonials or listen to the testimonials, that's what they say. It's easy, right? They come in, they do the recording, they give us the files, and they don't have to think about it. We have copywriters on the team doing show notes for them. We have audio engineers who get to know them and make sure they sound great. We get the post to their blog and do all that stuff. So they are just doing the creative part. Like you said, they're doing the part that they're uniquely able to do, and then they don't have to think about the behind the scenes stuff.
Awesome, and that's why I think a lot of people got started in the first place with this marketing stuff. Like that, they want like Doberman Dan wanted to just talk about his stuff, and I think that a lot of us kind of have gotten caught up in messing around with audio engineering and WordPress and copywriting and all those things you mentioned. And wouldn't it be great if they could just have your team do these things for them? And you mentioned that there was like this assignment one they started off with, and that leads to figuring out the rest of it and the marketing and the artwork and all that stuff. But I mean, what is this assignment one? Is it like a questionnaire, or like what when they first get started with you? What is this assignment, and what should they be doing?
Yeah, so it's I believe it's 6 PDF documents, and it's really just narrowing down into their market, what they know about their market, who their ideal market is, what they are offering their market, and really dialing into who their customers are, because that's one of the things I do when I choose someone to work with. I want to make sure that they already have a database in place. They've already got customers so that we can dig into that information. And what I call it is cloning your customers. So the idea is to know your customer really, really well, and we put a dossier together about their customer, and we make sure that the podcast lines up with that customer's wants, needs, desires, so that when we create the content, it clones their customers, because other people with the same wants, needs, desires, same problems will connect with them. And so the whole assignment one goes into all that, knowing the customer, sort of cloning your customer. And then from there, it goes into coming up with the title of the show, coming up with the tagline, coming up with the topics. But at the base of it is knowing your customer so that you can use the podcast to connect with more of them and clone them.
Awesome. I love that cloning your customers idea, because I know that, at least for me, if I'm not careful, I kind of fall into that curse of knowledge trap, and I assume that, that people know all the jargon, or that people, want to know about certain topics, or especially the advanced stuff. And I have to kind of dial back and take a second and think to myself, well, some of these super crazy advanced things I want to teach, maybe they're fun for me, but if someone is just getting started in, Amazon, or just getting started with WordPress or something, then they would want to know some of those more basic things. So I can completely relate to that. And so you mentioned a couple times that like there's this team to be hired, and there's like the money involved. And how does the billing aspect of that work? Is it like a revenue split, or a flat fee, or you come up with like a custom quote, or how is the money aspect of that handled?
Yeah, it depends on what they're doing. It's different for somebody who wants to do one show a week versus somebody who wants to do 3 or 5 shows per week, because we have fixed cost for doing all of that. So yeah, I used to do the rev split thing and the partnership thing when I first started, and I moved away from that because it made more work for me, more work than I was interested in doing. And so I've moved away from that to where we have a sign up fee for getting started, an initiation fee, and then monthly. And it really depends on what we're doing. If we're booking guests for you, if we're producing shows and show notes and all that stuff, it's customized to what exactly they're trying to do. So one show a week is going to be different than 3 or 5 shows a week, but we customize what else they want. Do they want us booking guests? Do they want us following up with guests? Do they want us doing social media stuff? We can do all of that. Do they want us syndicating it and turning it to video? It depends on how much or how little they want.
Awesome, makes perfect sense. And then so when you have these clients, and you do all these cool things for them, but they still need to, I guess, provide their end of things. They still need to record their podcast. And have you ever come across any difficulty with that? With maybe some of your clients maybe having trouble getting motivated, or doing the things they agreed to, or just in general getting burned out?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see it most of the time with anybody who wants to do. I've had them come in, and I like the guys, and I'm like, all right, let's see if you're going to be the one. But I always see the burnout with the guys doing 5 times a week. And I tell them, if they come in now, it's like, nah, we're not. No, no, no. I talk more people out of podcasting than into it because I know what it really takes. And that's it. If you're going to do 5 times a week, you're going to get burnt out much quicker. And I'd rather see that spread out over time so that your creativity can grow. But yeah, we put them on a schedule and we have a production schedule. That's what we do after assignment one. When we get back on the phone, we go through and I really get to know their market, get behind their vision, give them some suggestions. We get the final naming in place and I put them on a production schedule and they are to deliver every so many weeks. It's usually 4 to 6 weeks. They will deliver shows. We will produce them, and we won't launch till they have 8 shows in the can. So day one, when we launch, there's already 8 shows, which is usually 2 months of content behind it, so that they have a big runway just in case anything comes up, life gets in the way, technical difficulties. All that is thought about ahead of time. So we put them on the production schedule, keep them ahead. But yeah, people get burnt out. People run out of ideas. I have Tracy Matthews. Who has been with me for quite a while. And not too long ago, she's like, I just don't know what to do for the next episode. She's got over 100 shows. Or does she? Yeah, I don't know. So, she's got quite a lot of shows. I'm like, it's time for a best of. Just take a break. Let's do a best of. Let's find some stuff that really resonated with your audience. Let's look at the data and let's bring some of that back with a little bit of commentary. And that's one of the things we do is just, all right, you're out of ideas. Let me help you. Let me direct you what other things you can do. Sometimes it's a series, like in the Making Agents Rich show. When we were getting burnt out, we'd go into a series like the Think Rich series or the Rich Habits series where we had 8 shows lined up really quickly. Like, here are the 8 points we need to make, one in each show. So we help them with all that stuff. And as long as they are willing and able to do it, we'll get them through those roadblocks.
Cool. I mean, it sounds like the way you're describing all this that you've been through this before and you've thought ahead about some of the stuff. I mean, as far as the having that schedule and having those extra 8 shows in that content piggy bank or the runway, like you say, where even if they kind of get tired, then that runway can kind of still be playing out, or the that series or the best of, and it sounds like by the time they kind of have that break, then they're kind of recharged and ready to get started again. Is that about right?
Yeah, you know what I do, Robert? I told you, like, I get involved with these folks and I really care about them and I know them. So I love to read. I love to explore. I just like to really get my mind going all the time. And so I have these talks with them, the R Factor DOS, get to know things about them. And sometimes I come across books that they might like, and they'll get a book in the mail from me with a little note, thought you might like to do a show on this. I have someone who is doing a LinkedIn show specifically for people looking for jobs through LinkedIn, and I'll be reading the Wall Street Journal and see an article. I'll clip that article out, drop it in the mail, and be like, hey, drop a little Post-it note on it, thought this might be interesting for a show. I am here to inspire them and help them move forward and get them as creative as they can be. I can't give it all to them, but I can certainly motivate them and help them with what I think would assist them to meeting their vision.
Awesome. You sound like an awesome coach. Your brain's always, working even when it's not working to help those clients, and probably even while you're sleeping, it's probably doing something subconsciously to think about, well, what book or what article could I recommend them? And so, we're starting to sort of go over time, but I want to make sure before we take off and before we talk about your websites and stuff that, we mentioned when we first started talking about the 4-hour work week, and it sounds like we've been talking a lot about like having this system in place and having deadlines and having a team. And so you have all these clients. So how do you manage like your clients and your team and still have time for yourself while only working 4 hours a week?
Well, there's a distinction there. The 4 hours per week is what I invest into my real estate business because we've got a portfolio of real estate rentals. And actually, at this point, I'm usually working less than 4 hours there because I have those systems in place. I have a man on the ground running it. I have marketing systems in place that bring in leads every day. I have renewals, a system in place that makes sure that we know how many people are renewing and how many apartments we're going to have available. So that took me about 10 years to get in place. But even right now with the podcast factory, which is only about a year and a half old, it's luckily I have my wife working here with me who's now handling all the operations. And I basically try to use her to insulate me from all the needs. And then we have teams, we have audio engineers, we have copywriters, transcribers. All those people are running as a machine through the systems that we've set up over the time that we've been working on this. And most of that is managed through Basecamp. Rachel handles most of it, and I just have to come in for the more creative stuff. And so we're working on that right now to get me just focused on creative stuff because that's really what gives me the energy, and that's what I like to do. That creative and creating systems because I'm a nerd that way. But it's a really just a work in progress, consistently trying to find the things that you need results on and creating a system to get you the output that you're looking for. And it's kind of a geek hobby of mine to do that and turn everything into little machines. But that's pretty much the way I did it in my real estate business. That's the way I'm doing it right now. And once this business is dialed in and I don't need to be here anymore, I'll be building another business the same exact way.
Awesome. Well, I really like your mindset in that respect, just as far as like you said, like having or knowing what results you want, knowing what that output is, and then having that team, and then running your team through those systems. That way, you can have those sort of predictable results coming from the machine. And I mean, it sounds like what you've built for yourself with your real estate stuff, with your rental properties, where it's almost like in that business, like you're like the one client, right? It's like you're all that whole team kind of works for you, and then and the podcast factory, then when you have a client, sort of the same deal there, where that client can just focus on their creative stuff. They can focus on just that stuff that is uniquely them, and then your team deals with all the technical stuff and all the details. They all the the legwork, but then that client can kind of do what fulfills them. So it sounds like this is a pattern in everything in your life, where like with your rental business, and then with the podcasting business. It sounds like this is just your pattern, your habit there.
Yeah, if you were to, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Colby, but I rank very highly at systemizing and keeping systems running on my Colby. So that is you're absolutely correct, Robert. It's a pattern that is ingrained in me, and I can't break free of it even if I tried.
Awesome. Well, why fight it, especially if it's making you money, right?
Good point.
So cool. So as we're kind of starting to wind down here, when you deal with these different clients that have different businesses and different ideas and different work ethics and stuff, I mean, do you see a number one universal mistake that like all these marketers are making in their businesses?
Universal mistake that these guys are making. I don't really, in my best customers, I don't see it. In the ones that, so I've gone through the trouble of figuring out my best type customer, my worst type, and that's kind of how we score people on the application. And the big mistake that I see in the worst type customer is thinking that a podcast is the business or a podcast is going to save a business. That is not the way it's going to work. The thing that I see about my best customers is that they just have a business that's working, buzzing along, making money, and they want to plug a podcast into it to go ahead and amplify their results. And that's what works, and that's the people that I like to spend my time with.
Awesome. Really good advice. So the podcast itself is not the business. It's just a way to get traffic and a way to boost that existing business. So, I mean, really good advice today, and lots of cool, breakthroughs and takeaways and stuff like that. And I want to make sure that everyone knows everything that there is to know about this cool guy, Jonathan Rivera. So, I mean, what sort of websites do you have, and where should people go after listening to our conversation today?
Well, you can listen to more conversations like this with me and my mentors and some of my clients over at thepodcastfactory.com.
Awesome. Short and sweet, thepodcastfactory.com. So everyone should go right there right now. thepodcastfactory.com. Thepodcastfactory.com to check out all those podcasts in the Podcast Factory family and see what Jonathan is up to day after day. So, Jonathan, thanks for coming on the show and dropping all this knowledge about systems and about podcasting and about a little peek into your consulting business, all kinds of good stuff. And everyone should go to thepodcastfactory.com. And Jonathan, thanks for being on the show to share what you had to share with us today.
Robert, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Subscribe to us right now while it's still fresh on your mind at robertplank.com/iTunes, or just search Robert Plank in your iTunes app.